A fatal convenience is one of those things in our world that you use: cell phone, deodorant, shampoo, laundry detergent, paint, disinfectants, literally things that you don't think about. You use them every day. But as we've scaled and as we've commercialized and as we've capitalized, there has been places along the way where we've chemicalized these things.
You brought along our first furry guest.
Yeah.
Chaga is in the building right here. So if anybody hears a little rumbling, little husky bass, it's Chaga. Can you tell us a little bit about Chaga?
Chaga's 4.5, German Shepherd from Germany. I got turned down for adoption because of the size of my land. It's crazy. Don't get me started. I tried to get a German Shepherd, and they was like, "Your property's too big." I was like, "What?" So I found Chaga. He's got a first level training, so he's got some protection, and you realize it's just his instinct as well too. So now I've been just taking him everywhere with me, like just kind of orienting him outside of the property. You know, he's had a lot of experience with the wild already. Mountain lions, full on face to face, bobcats, coyotes, and me. So now just kind of getting him to be comfortable indoors and buildings and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm stoked, and it's just there's such a bond that it's actually harder and harder to leave him. So it's cool.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And of course, I've been to your place, and yeah, it's a little rugged out there.
Yeah.
And you got that awesome dome set up that you're staying in, and Chaga's right there, just like so alert. Even when he walked in, he was scoping everything out, making sure everything's kosher for you.
Yeah.
Then he laid down.
Yeah. He smells everything. He checks everything out. When he's cool, now he's out. Right.
Yeah. So awesome, man. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for bringing. And I asked you this also. Why'd you name him Chaga?
Yeah. Well, as soon as I met him, he was six weeks from Germany. I saw his coloring, and it was instant. That's what chaga, the mushroom, looks like on a birch tree. It's dark on the outside, barely looks like it's not a traditional mushroom looking thing. It's kind of like this conch of, strange, kind of a tumor looking thing off of a birch tree. So it's dark on the outside with this coloring, and then red and orange underneath, and that's what he looks like. So I was like, that's chaga.
That's awesome.
And it's one of my favorite mushrooms too,
right.
so.
It's funny you would say tumor looking thing, because there's so much peer-reviewed evidence on chaga versus cancer and increasing NK cell activity like 200, 300%, and all these incredible things.
Yeah, and there's a symbiosis with an injured birch tree, right? So there's that use, the anti-stress, the adaptogenic properties. And it's one of the greatest antioxidants on the planet, and then when you also look at the use of it literally throughout all major dynasties dating back from the 10,000 years in the traditional Chinese medicine and the Vikings and all of these things deep into Mongolia and Russia, all of these major kingdoms used chaga mushrooms.
Special, man.
Yeah.
And it's as if, again, if you're not tuned into that, it's as if it doesn't exist in a sense for a large percentage of the population.
Yeah.
But it's one of those story things. There's so much historical evidence, but also now we have so much peer review. And this is a big reason why I leverage science, because it's just affirming so many things that our ancestors knew already. 100%. And so you're a renowned superfood hunter. You're the very definition of what that is. And so chaga is one of the many things that you've explored, and you brought some wonderful things to the market, like barukas we talked about earlier. But I wanted to bring you on today because truly it has been a breath of fresh air, which it might be a little bit of a pun because of what we're going to talk about today, with your Fatal Conveniences series. It's one of my favorite things to pop on and check out. And I love the little introductions to those fatal conveniences that you put on Instagram. Those are really fun and engaging as well. So what triggered you to want to, first of all, what is a fatal convenience, and what made you want to start talking about it?
Yeah, it's, just quickly, a fatal convenience is one of those things in our world that you use: cell phone, deodorant, shampoo, laundry detergent, paint, disinfectants, hand sanitizers, blue jeans. It's literally things that you don't think about. You use them every day. But as we've scaled and as we've commercialized and as we've capitalized, there has been places along the way where we've chemicalized these things. And so as we use them, there are things we're using every day that are actually undercutting us and our health. And the origin is very interesting because it had like a layered effect on me. So my father, if you really want to see the story, to really understand why it affected him so much, he had what was called a chemical sensitivity disorder before any of this stuff ever was known, right? It was in the late 80s, early 90s, where all of a sudden my dad, a perfume, a smell, a cologne, a shampoo, a deodorant, any type of artificial smell, neurologically and immunologically would throw him off. And when he would tell you, and he'd be fogged out, and this is a bright, tenured professor, right? He would start complaining and the headaches, and you kind of was like, when you first heard about it, I was like, gotta be in his head. This sounds weird. Like, what do you mean? And over time, he would then teach us as a family. Then I graduated college. I'm now in Colorado, and in the early 90s. And so he keeps saying, like, hey, if you're going to come back and you got to use these shampoos and these deodorants if you want to be around me, and you can't wash your clothes with these things, and like, these are the criteria to hang out with my dad. So as we started, and then he stopped being a professor, still worked at the University of Minnesota, and then was a counselor. He went back, got a second master's degree, and then so what happened was he started needing to educate the people on his floor. He'd send out these letters saying, hey, sorry, could you please not wear all of these things? They're kind of toxic and poisonous to me. And again, it was like, pushing a massive boulder uphill. No one heard of this stuff. And it's a real thing. And chemical sensitivity, and make VHS tapes and give them to everybody, then see these reports and all this stuff. And then over time, as I kind of desensitized myself and using these non-toxic products, I then became sensitive to the invasion of the perfumes and the colognes and all, and it would and I would feel weird because I wasn't using them anymore. So the long story is how and why some of that setup happened to my father. He was a naval operator. He was a keeper of the dragon, they called him. He was working on atomic bombs. So he was in the Cuban Missile Crisis on an aircraft carrier getting ready to drop a bomb, right? And so that was his career in the Navy. And of course he comes out and his thyroid's trashed. So then in their bright idea, he drinks another radioactive fluid and it destroys the rest of it. And then he's on medication for the rest of his life because he has no thyroid. And I really believe that endocrine disrupting situation really compromised him in a massive way. So that's the genesis story. And then as I kind of continued down that path, the first Dr. Mohsen Hurmanish, who's kind of a sixth generation farmer but researcher and PhD, he dropped this bomb on me 20 years ago. And he said, hey, that cell phone you have, showed me all the studies back in the day. That's a fatal convenience. It's like, and here's the studies. You put it up to your head and it disrupts because we're electrical and the DNA is working on electromagnetics, sending in the RNA. He's like beyond chemistry and biology and all of that stuff. And here's the studies to show it. And I was like, wait, what? And so as he was starting to, also he educated me a bunch of stuff in nutrition, had me look at certain things differently. That term just was like, it anchored in like, oh, now electronics and EMFs, and then my father's history and this whole thing. And as I was exploring doing a podcast, this was popping up. Like, I don't want people to unnecessarily suffer. And that's, listen, I funny because I listen to you so acutely now more than ever, because you just do such great work making it palatable for people and doing such incredible research and unleashing that and unplugging that for people so they understand it. And there's been many times where I'm saying that I'm inspired by you as I'm looking through the stuff, because you articulate it so well. So this practice now of kind of digging underneath things has been, it's weird, because on the one hand, I'm saying it, I'm such an optimistic person, that to realize that so many things that we're doing is hurting us. And when you realize that over time, when you've discovered something, a formaldehyde and a blue gene or whatever, and the FDA writes about it, they know about it, or the EPA in this case, but they don't do anything about it. And so I'm scratching my head going, okay, so it's a known carcinogen. Here's the studies. You wrote an article on it, almost guilt, letting out the idea that you're less guilty or something, but yet you're not regulating anything. So then these big things of 60 to 90 untested chemicals are being emitted in our atmosphere every year in our environment. And then you're going, wow. So do I think agencies are doing a good job? No. So we then have to become our own watchdogs for these things, because they're, you can eat all the good stuff you want, but you're being undercut by toxins. And then it's like sides of a coin, right? So anyway, that's how it started. And now I'm curious about it.
It's so interesting, because I've been bringing up this point as well. I would love if these regulatory entities really were looking out for us. I would love if that was the truth.
Yeah.
But the EPA has approved 40,000 different chemicals for use in pesticides. There's it's insane. And the Environmental Protection Agency is supposed to be, we're a part of the environment as well. So they're supposed to be looking out for us. Yeah. And now, chemicals like chlorpyrifos used as a pesticide, well documented, increased incidence of miscarriages, developmental issues for babies. The list goes on, but it's caught up in red tape, because companies, it's cheap. They get it down to a certain price point where it's easy to the yield of the crops and all these different things. These manufacturers, your health is not their concern. That's the big thing I think that we need to get. And also putting our trust in these regulatory agencies, it's FDA approved, or it's the EPA, whatever. That's just not the reality of things. Yeah. And so this is the point that I want to make is, for me, I'm very big on let's just look at the results. Mm-hmm. We have the highest rates of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer, ADHD, kidney disease, liver disease. Yeah. The list goes on that we've ever seen in history. Yeah. And we're supposed to be so evolved that we'd figure some of these things out. Why is everything so bad? And what you're bringing up is, it's not just one thing. Yeah. It's this total, and many of these things are convenient things that we've really kind of, in a shadow way, just kind of bought into. We don't think about it, that are all kind of contributing to this chemical weird soup that we live in today.
And no one knows the cumulative effect. No idea. And so with even these regulatory things, doesn't mean anything. Really doesn't. Their regulation of, their bisphenol A or their phthalates that show up almost in every personal care product that undercuts the hormonal system and disrupts it and contributes to liver and kidney disease and cancer. No one knows. So it's like, okay, cool. Well, you seem to try to regulate the shampoo, but what about the deodorant? And what about perfume? And what about the cosmetics that you're putting on your face? And so, like, can it be overwhelming? 100%. But it's like everything. You just have to kind of go one thing at a time. And I think the whole thing that I'm trying to do is I'm revealing a fatal convenience, but then I'm really trying to spend time with a solution, right? To get like, hey, you don't have to not use the cell phone or the laptop or dental floss. That super glide stuff has Teflon on it, shown and proven already that it contributes to cancer of the kidney. So just because it's convenient and it slides through, it's got Teflon, and Teflon is the most permeated chemical in the world, period. So even that non-stick pan, throw it away right now. Throw it away. Now I use this bamboo dental floss, and I just put it under the water before I use it. I'm like, okay, now it works pretty much the same. It's like you just find these little techniques instead of like going, because once I'm like, I don't know if I want to put Teflon in my mouth.
Yeah, and it's such a sensitive place as well.
Yeah, you're going to absorb. I don't want to cook my food in it. Convenient for it not to stick. But is it worth that convenience for just punching you in the kidney cancer guts, right? It's like,
well, this is, and I'm just going to be 1,000 with you. Some of these things I was even, I guess a part of me was like, I don't know if I want to talk about these things because of the fact of like, for many people, it's not for me personally, but there are recesses of my mind that would still do this. But some people just feel like, I just don't want to know. Right. Don't tell me so it doesn't freak me out.
Right.
And it would be this concept of ignorance is bliss. It's a really twisted way to look at things because it's not bliss. It's stacking conditions against you. So at least we can be enlightened about the things. We don't have to be neurotic about them.
Totally.
But it is your responsibility to know. And we have to stop taking things at face value because we live in a very different world than what we evolved in.
Yeah.
So one of those things is, and again, we're keeping it 1,000. One of those things with the fatal conveniences that you've highlighted is mouthwash. Yeah. Right now, I'm a big fan of people not having the stank in his breath. Yeah. When they're talking to me in close proximity. Like I would prefer to not have to deal with that. And so I'm a fan of oral hygiene, all that good stuff. But the way that we've gone about it, wow. This is a little bit scary. Can you talk about this fatal convenience of mouthwash?
Yeah. I mean, it's fun when I do these things because you look at the history and the real, throughout literally from the Egyptian times, we all wanted good breath, right? So it's not changed. We don't want to. And actually, there was a point where they were using, I don't know why, but Portuguese, they had great urine. For whatever reason, but people were using urine, and it's actually a very sanitizing thing, right? So that history has been there for a long time.
So let me get this straight. So people were using not just any urine, but Portuguese urine was the ideal for the cleanliness of the mouth.
It's like anything from the dastardly deeds of even shark finning for the Chinese. Like for some reason they get thinking that that's doing anything for their health. So who the hell knows? I was just looking at the history, getting fascinated. We're like, let's just unpack this because you start to see like, oh, once these guys got a hold of it, they still had, menthol and eucalyptus at its core, right? They're still using things that weren't disturbing the microflora. Keep in mind, the mouth is the second largest population of good bacteria, of all bacteria, but of good bacteria.
Or
so
microbiome.
Yeah. So And so think about that. Your digestion is happening, right? And so then it takes that turn where, Listerine started, and all these other ones. And so when you get that alcohol base, you're just now at that proximity, you're starting to wipe out the bacteria. And so all of it. So now the dependence on that, and keep in mind, you have to peel the layers, and no one wants to do that work. So it's like, number one, if you're having bad breath, it's probably going on in the gut. It's probably food selection. It's probably, an indicator. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I've stood in front of people going, they're literally dying. Not that the breath is so bad, but my senses are like, they're dying.
And we say that too, like something died in there.
Yeah. But I think instinctually we actually know that whatever they're doing, they're not thriving. And so it's a very deep thing. So the microbiome down in the stomach is being affected. Then ineffective enzymatic activity. And then when it's in the mouth, you've just annihilated, and now you just keep doing that. And so it's getting progressively worse.
Because that alcohol is acting as like a total destroyer of microflora.
Exactly.
It doesn't care if it's good or bad.
It doesn't matter. And that's where over sanitization of any kind is not a good idea. Like even the hands and the hypochondriacs in this day and age, it can cause a lot of problems. And so wiping that out only exacerbates that whole thing. And now you have on top of it, again, these fatal conveniences of multiple punches. So now you've got, yellow number, what was it? Listerine was always that faint yellow. That was their signature.
You're talking about that brownish
Listerine. That
man,
literally looked like urine.
That stuff.
Yeah.
The first time I had it was at my grandmother's neighbor's house, Mrs. Sweet. Her name was Mrs. Sweet, and she had some brown Listerine. Yeah. I don't know why I had it.
Yeah.
And I had some, and I felt like, oh, this is what it tastes like to be 50 years older, like instantaneously. Yeah. Like that'd be a good slogan for them.
Yeah.
Listerine. Brown Listerine. If you want to know what it tastes like to be 50 years older, drink this today. Or if you want to feel, now I'm just spitballing some ideas here about brown Listerine's ad. It is so terrible. Oh. If fresh breath isn't enough and an exorcism is needed instead, reach for brown Listerine. Hell,
you got a demon.
Do you enjoy self-flagellation? Oh. Beat your microbiome to a pulp with brown Listerine.
Yeah. You're dealing with a pH, an acidic environment, anaerobic environment, and on top of it, so again, this multiple punch. Once you start chemicalizing things and not obeying nature, that acidity changes. So once that die-off happens from the microflora, that acidity changes. And so now it becomes more acidic. After about 5.5 pH, now it literally, the second wave of that is it's eating your enamel.
Yeah.
So now you're literally kind of undercutting that, not to mention the yellow number 3s and the green number 6s, or if I've got those mixed up, I don't know, but those as well are carcinogenic and connected to cancers. So you're like, how many different, and some of these fatal conveniences, dude, I just have to literally, I'm working on a book right now where I can kind of dig deeper, but some of these things, there's so many, I just have to kind of go, okay, what's the top 3 things or one that we can focus on that is going on, so I can distill that down to go, this is bad enough, so let me just focus on that and tell people how gnarly this is. But when you start picking it apart, and not to mention the overuse of it, just destroy it. All of these little things that aren't so little, think about over 20 years, 25, like all that stuff, you can't survive. It's like a forest fire coming through and wiping out the ecosystem all the time. It's every time you swish with that stuff.
You know what's hitting me right now is the fact that the digestive process really does start in the mouth.
Yeah.
And so you're encoding your food with your DNA and RNA. You're encoding your food with your own enzymes that your body's producing, getting that food familiar with your system. Could our devastation of our oral microbiome be leading to autoimmune issues and all these digestive distress issues that are, again, skyrocketing today as well? But we don't attribute it to things like this. And it likely definitely plays a large part.
It has to. Like, again, every zone in your body is a different zone. It's a different thriving ecosystem. It's got its own balances, acids, alkalines, all of these stuff. So is your mouth. So you're bringing in acidic thing every day, multiple times a day, and you've changed the environment. Now those amylase enzymes, not to mention you've already killed the bacteria, but now the amylase that you need for carbohydrates to start that process is no longer there. It can't thrive. It can't do its job. And so we're just playing with we're throwing things at it. Just our whole, the whole American view of health is so flipped. Like it's literally almost the opposite of what you should be doing. And so,
right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's where I'm like, yeah, of course I like good breath, but let's just make sure that you're eating well. And, eucalyptus is still great. Peppermint, still great. Clean up your diet, eat, chew on some mint leaves. I mean, there's a million different things that you can do to not, expose yourself to harm.
Instead, we reach for that brown Listerine. I forgot about the brown Listerine, man. Like, of course, I know the more cool mint type, but that brown Listerine changed my life. All right, it made me feel like. Have you seen the preview for M. Night Shyamalan's newest movie? It's like where people go to an island and they get old really fast.
No, I haven't.
Like I felt like that. Like I felt like I started to decay.
Yeah.
And I just thought of another slogan because I think it came out in like 1879 from listening to your Fatal Convenience on it. Do you fancy capital punishment? Don't give them the chair. Give them brown Listerine. Executing people's microbiome since 1879. All right. So
Exactly.
It's so crazy that these things are, again, it just becomes a normal part of our life. It's a fatal convenience. Fresh breath, kill, get everything sterilized in there, which that is the wrong approach. We're not looking to be sterilized. No. We're looking for cleanliness, for balance.
Yeah.
But the last thing that I want to mention and throw it back to you is that when we're devastating this oral microbiome, we're creating the susceptibility for pathogens, for more gnarly things, because we don't have that protective force field.
Big time. Yeah, and that's think about that. I remember saying this in my book when I had this moment. I'm like, how vulnerable are we opening up our mouth and putting stuff in? Like from out here to in there. And now we're talking about the very start of that process. And you've divorced nature. You've doubled down on chemistry that hasn't even been vetted for the most part, right? We're going back to that stat where 9,000 total of the 60,000 chemicals created every year are tested. And of those tested, they're pretty compromised in their testing to get the results that they want, and all of those things. So it's like, listen, you can grab a spruce leaf and start chewing on it. It's freaking great for your mouth, and there's no side effects. So yeah, you are literally creating a dangerous scenario. You have germ theory, terrain theory. So think about just that first place where you've now germs. We all know this, right? Or maybe some don't, but germ theory, it's the basis of American Medical Association that, we're going to catch something. Whereas Antoine Bechamp, back in the day, was one of the greatest microbiological researchers of our time. He said, no. The environment that a bacteria or a virus comes into knows what it needs to survive. So if it has an environment where it will and can survive, it will hang out and proliferate. If it doesn't, it takes off. It'd be like, okay, you go to the Arctic right now and you're going to be like, hell no. It's freezing. I don't know where my food is. I'm out. It's the same thing. The intelligence of life at its core knows how to thrive and survive. So if you've now changed your terrain, you've made it acidic, anaerobic, now you've invited other types of bad, not so beneficial microbes and viruses to come into that very opening that you've now said, world, come in. So it is, so yeah, I mean, can we be dramatic about it? Hell yeah, we can be dramatic about it. Stop doing these things that are literally undercutting and my whole thing, dude, it comes down to, I just want people to have a freaking great life. That's what it all comes down to. So listen, don't do that. Do this instead. And the cool thing is, if a bunch of us become aware of these things that are harming us, that naturally says, don't do that. And then we're not going to pay for those anymore. We're going to pay for these healthier ones. And then that whole world's going to increase, and the other guys are going to be forced to change and get out of this whole thing. So that's the undercurrent as well. Is like, you get to feel better. You get to have a healthier life, not being punched in the kidney with these chemicals or liver or whatever. And you get to start feeling better, right? And so it's just this whole thing. So we can't, in this day and age, we can't just pretend we got to just eat perfectly. I believe this to my core. I saw my father suffer. We also have to learn how to get away from the chemicalized food, processed foods, personal care, EMFs, the experiment that we're doing with no oversight. I don't care what agency and letters there are. There's no oversight, not for this magnitude. So it's on us. We're having this conversation. It's literally on us. You're doing it. You're peeling back these layers so that people can understand this is what's going on. So, but I like that because, I too grew up with the delusion that I thought, everyone had, governments were supposed to do what they're supposed to do. The UN's supposed to do what they're supposed to do. And I see a lot of failure. So I'm like, that's cool. Now we gotta, let's do it. And again, like I always go back to this example too, where I was like, water, right? So I'm in the middle. I mean, literally to this day, I can see the scene. I'm in the middle of Africa. I'm looking at baobab. So baobab, Madagascar, Western Africa, Southern Africa, incredible baobab tree. It's incredible superfood, but it comes from these crazy places. And I was there. It's whole funny story, but then I got involved with Raincatcher. This organization doesn't exist anymore, but it was a very simple way of filtering water. And I just saw this kid getting this water that was just horrific. And there was animals and feces and everything else, and he needed water. And he was walking back and I'm like, how is this possible? And there's like more NGOs than you can possibly imagine in Africa. You can possibly imagine. There's more resources in Africa, food and precious metals. And okay, well, it's not working out. They're not solving problems. And then I'm like, well, where's the UN? Where are these? So I'm sitting there going, I'm watching Russian roulette play out right in front of me. And I'm like, let me clean that water. So I take the jerry can, dirt water. I don't mean to go off on the water, but I'm making a point here. You know, many people throughout those areas never seen what clean water looks like. So I clean this water, I show it to them, and boom, they have clean water, and there's no moving parts. They don't have to. It's the filter. And so it goes back to the same thing, full circle. Is like, I'm seeing it. It's people are being affected. I saw my father being affected. I'm seeing research. I'm seeing people. I'm seeing chemicals and stuff that are clearly disrupting hormones and causing cancer. So what am I going to turn away from it? It's right there. Am I going to turn away from the kid? I'm sitting here with a filter. No. So that's the thing underneath it all. It's like, I don't know why these organizations. I mean, listen, that being said, there's some great people in those organizations trying to do great things. I've met them. They're wonderful. So I don't want to come off saying all of these people and organizations suck. I don't think they're being effective as they can be. And I think we lose track of boots on the ground, and we lose track of, like, you know, diapers on a baby that are full of plastic. It's a really, really, really bad thing. You know, laptops on a mother who has a baby is proven to cause impediment to an unborn baby and the mom. So these things need to be shared because people are suffering unnecessarily.
Yeah. And that's powerful. And the beautiful thing is you just directed it back to us. And we are so powerful. But if we are not aware of that ability to choose, to learn, to educate ourselves, we kind of relent to have other people and organizations making choices for us, which they're basically laying out what the American dream looks like or civilization looks like by basically poisoning a baby from day one with, you know, all these abnormal things that we're putting onto their bodies, to the abnormal formulas, and the list goes on and on. But to take a step back, you know, even we started with mouthwash being one of these fatal conveniences, and you mentioned something like even with the hygiene aspect of flossing, but using a bamboo floss, just wet it a little bit, or just getting toothpaste, just take a step that doesn't have artificial chemicals and dyes and parabens, and just get something a little bit better. And we actually had on Katie Wells, Wellness Mama. So she's got some great brands that are utilizing, again, like simple things, essential oils, natural ingredients. But we've got to understand there's a transition with that, because you're not basically, you know, destroying your oral microbiome with Listerine anymore. So it's not going to be the same when you use coconut oil and a little bit of peppermint essential oil, right? That's what I do. And I'll do the swishing with that for a bit, what's referred to as oil pulling, you know what I mean? And helping to kind of clean house in there, little refreshing, but not like Megatron devastation taking place, you know what I mean? So what are some other things that we can do as far as the oral health?
Well, yeah, that one's a good one. I mean, obviously the oil pulling, that goes back 20,000 years, basically, Ayurveda, right? So that's largely maybe the oldest healthcare system. And, you know, I would, again, go back to what you're eating, right? So those kind of things.
That's making your teeth.
Huh?
It's what makes your teeth.
Yeah.
You know, the food that you eat.
Yeah, exactly. And the microflora, right? So what
and the smells coming out of you.
Yeah. Yeah, big time. So, ask your partner, what do I smell? What do I smell like? What is it? And that can be an indicator. But simple things like, again, you go back to, like, I don't use any swishing stuff. I mean, aside from oil pulling on a somewhat consistent basis, I just go back to healthy toothbrushing and healthy toothpaste, right? Without propylene glycols and whitening stuff and all of those things. So so there's a lot of, and literally just, a little colloidal silver is great, antibacterial. Add it in some water, swish it around, and if you want the zing, you can put a drop of peppermint in there, and really even tea tree, right? Swish it around, swish it out. These things are incredible, and they don't have side effects of undercutting your entire health. And they've been used again for tea tree is incredible. Like I even use it on surfing, brushing up against rocks and cutting yourself. It's like fantastic. So
yeah. Awesome. So just to reiterate, just take a step, so whether it's switching out your floss, maybe swapping out your mouthwash, your toothpaste, just take a step. It doesn't have to be perfect, but let's just reduce our exposure to these fatal conveniences a little bit at a time. And I love that you started with that. I want to ask you about the next one, which I just went to a friend of mine. He's a comedian, and he was doing a set, and he kept on putting chapstick on, during the set, and he was making jokes about it as well. And I saw your fatal convenience on the chapstick. And it was a great time. It was incredibly funny. But at the same time, I was like, man, that's one of those things that Darin was talking about. So chapstick. And I know some people are like, what about my chapstick? I'm not giving up my chapstick. I'm not. Just relax. We have to be informed. That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird because let's just stay away at this point of the whatever chemicals are in there. So first off, you're undercutting the natural signals of your lips first. So your lips are creating new cells underneath, and then each layer is drying out, and then it comes out, and if your lips are super sensitive, right? They're like this little receiver of the environment, as well as your nose from an olfactory standpoint. So if it's dry, then your body turns on that cycle faster, right? So then that cycle, so this is all like, when you hear it, it's like, duh, it makes sense, right? So it turns that on and then turns that over. Of course, hydration plays a role, because I too been on an airplane and been traveling, and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't even drank enough water, and you can definitely fall into that, and then I'll like coconut oil or something. But that being aside, as soon as you start putting that layer on, now you're literally turning off that signal, because now the lips aren't perceiving it. You've created a barrier of your lips receiving that signal, so it shuts off that cycling process of creating new cells. So now all of a sudden, it's not cycling, but as soon as that wears off, your lips are extremely dry because there's nothing happening. There's natural cycle is not happening. So then you go back and you hit it again and hit it again and hit it again, and then you literally become addicted, and your lips become addicted to it. The major chemical side of this thing is parabens, right? So these things, God, there's just certain chemicals that show up in so many things. Phthalates show up in so many personal care products. Parabens show up. And this is, again, it's a known carcinogen. So you're
again, known carcinogen, cancer-causing agent. That's what it means.
Bingo. And you're like, let's just sit with that for a second. I mean, I'm going to put this on my lips, and why the hell is it in my chapstick? Right? So that's an obvious no. So you're so it's trying to, and not to mention, I think it's up to six layers deep. It's like a very penetrating compound, and so it's affecting. And I haven't even looked into what it's doing from vitamin D perspective, but how is it disrupting the chemicalizing of the skin itself? It's penetrating so deeply. So when you dermis, epidermis, and you're going into all of that stuff, you're affecting that and bringing a known carcinogen deep into your lips. So what are the links of cancer as it relates to chapstick? And I don't even know yet, you know? So, so those are the things that the biggest thing you're undercutting your natural cycle of your skin production on your lips specifically, and then you're putting a known carcinogen. It's just a prescription for disaster. And then you get to this point where you literally, I'm so addicted to putting it on that it's tough to break that cycle, but you have to get through that little uncomfortable bit of letting your lips cycle through and rehydrate themselves and get some of that new skin cell out in front, right? So yeah, maybe it's a little inconvenient for a week, but then you'll break the habit of this. And listen, if you're in a gnarly situation, there's shea butter and coconut oil, and I've had to use those. And when we were traveling for Down to Earth and in Australia, we were in in the middle of some heavy heat and dry and ocean, and there's definitely moments where I was like, wow, I need something. But I would never, ever put a commercial product on my lips. This was like organic coconut oil that I take everywhere with me anyway. So that's what I would use, and easy to not use in terms of that. The commercialized thing I would just stay away from. And there are some, beeswax or bee companies doing some cool stuff with propolis, and I think even they're throwing some vitamin D in there as well. And so there's some companies, you might even be connected to some
beekeepers.
Yeah, beekeepers.
Oh yeah.
So beekeepers are doing some good stuff.
Beekeepers.
Yeah, so that wasn't even meant to be a plug, but I have heard they've been doing some great stuff. And that's, again, that's as listeners here, it's great to know that there's companies that are following nature and following physiology, chemistry, biology, and using these natural products that go with it. And then, oh wow, I can still use this. I can still makes my lips feel great, but I'm not undercutting my own chemistry and biology of what my lips need to do, what my lips need to sense, and most importantly, the disruption and the hormone disruption and the cancer potentiation that you're doing with this stuff. I mean, come on, man.
That's so powerful. That was the thing, the truth, the idea that was new to me was the fact that the constant dependence upon the chapstick, it's preventing your lips from doing the thing that it would be doing to produce the skin cells necessary to have the texture and the balance that's needed, because it's not getting a chance to do it because we've created this addiction. And so that's one aspect. And the other aspect being that, putting these things on our lips, of course, what you put on your skin, you're also eating. And that's literally on your mouth. It's on your lips in the first place. So you're definitely getting you a nice helping of that stuff. So preventing the lips from doing what they're designed to do, but also, this is a game changer, your lips are giving you feedback for what you need. They're sensors, your skin overall, but really your lips in a more intense way, in a sense, is giving you feedback about potential deficiencies in things, or your body's thermoregulation, or whatever the case might be. It's just like, shut up, lips. Just throw this
humidity levels and whatever else. And and that's the thing. I mean, I'm working right now on the book, and I'm getting into a lot of, I've done a few, but I'm getting a lot into the women's cosmetic side of things. I mean, we're just talking about lipstick. I mean, we're just talking about chapstick. Imagine now.
Yeah, right.
The lipstick and how much. So that's a whole nother opportunity of change.
I don't know how many times people have licked their lips during this part of the show. Even me. We got a bunch of LL Cool J's out there, listening. But it's just our bodies are amazing. Our bodies are able to adapt and to be in balance. But we live in an abnormal condition where we're not allowing our bodies to reach that homeostasis. We're constantly masking symptoms. So what are your lips, or what are your dry lips trying to tell you, or cracked lips, or whatever the case might be? And like you said, there's a transition point where you're allowing your body to rebalance itself. You got to trust the process. You can use some natural things like you mentioned. And many good companies are like stepping up to upgrade things, remove a lot of the toxic chemicals, and use things that are proven, that have historical background and also some peer-reviewed evidence as well. So really powerful stuff. So we covered mouthwash. We covered chapstick. Now I got to ask you, this was the one I was like, I don't know if we should talk about this one. And this is flying, commercial flying.
Yeah.
Why is this a fatal convenience?
Well, I mean, there's two layers to that actually, right? The scanner, which is one part of it, the TSA scanner, and then the flying. There's so many actually, and I kept it pretty brief in that one, but there's so many different aspects to it. Because we're up higher, we're getting hit with more cosmic radiation. That's not UVA, UVB. UVA largely gets taken care of before it hits the earth, but we're getting more of it. So it's very carcinogenic, that type of radiation. So not to mention that. So it's very stressful on the body, but you're also in a low oxygen environment, and the pressurization creates fluid buildup and thrombosis and blood clots. And so, I mean, if you're not healthy and you don't have good circulation, it's literally dangerous to get on a plane. I mean, there's certain things I could say about the state of the world right now that make it even more dangerous, but I'll probably refrain from opening up that can of worms. But
for now,
but yeah, it creates a whole. So there's a stress response. There's a low oxygen environment. There's cosmic radiation.
Can we stay on this cosmic radiation part for a second again?
Mm-hmm.
Like that might sound cool, like Silver Surfer or whatever. Like you might be. No, I mean humans. If we just to be rational about this, we're not designed to be up there.
No.
Right? Like that's something.
To 40,000
and
feet.
It's been like, as far as like the ability to do this on a semi-consistent basis is like literally just recent decades, just a few decades. And so have we adapted to that? Have we evolved to be able? No, we're not even remotely close to that.
Right.
And that's the thing for us to understand. And what are the ramifications? We don't know. But we do see higher rates of certain things taking place with flight attendants, with pilots, for example. And so, but this is a place for one of my youngest son's godmother she's been a flight attendant for like 40 years, but she's also so invested in health. Like she's done so much and she's seen people come and go for many years. Sure. And so we want to double down on your personal health care if you are required to be traveling a lot. But we've got to keep in mind that this is a very abnormal thing and that radiation is a real thing. Yeah. And also, and this is what I want to lean into a little bit more, the essentially the recycled air aspect and the massive lack of moisture just when you get up there to the air you're accessing. Yeah. And this is why, I mean, you become rapidly, significantly dehydrated. One expert I remember from a few years back was giving an analogy of it being like 3 times, the air being 3 times more dry than the Sahara Desert. Yeah. And so you're having like a direct 1-2% drop in your body's baseline hydration level, which that in of itself can damage your DNA, lead to cognitive decline. And there's something in the mix here if people want to think about what are the symptoms. Of course, like you probably feel a little bit more fatigued. Sure. You'll probably, of course, maybe more irritable. You get drunk faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about that. How is that happening?
Yeah, well, because of the poor oxygen, the slowing of the metabolism, you put this poison in, and your body, it's a 4-alarm fire of trying to get this poison metabolized out of your body. Keep in mind, people, that alcohol is a poison. It raises this alarm in the body. So when your body's under that level of stress, it quickly moves alcohol to its number one, because now you've just ingested a poison on top of all of these things. So your body's ability to deal with that gets compromised quite a bit. And not to mention, it just adds to, and that's the funny thing is I don't, I don't understand when people get on a plane, they kind of let go in a certain sense. Like they just start drinking more, or they just eat all this kind of food, which I always bring food, people are like, oh, you can do that? Like I have a backpack. I've made a salad. I put it in a mason jar. And
I'm bringing food or I'm not eating.
Exactly. It's a great fasting, right? So,
and by the way, some researchers, the Salk Institute has really been pioneering so much of the work around circadian medicine.
Yes.
And one of the things that they've talked about that they're confirming in the data is when you're shifting time zones, one of the ways to help your body to adjust quicker, because this can throw off your body's clock. Again, it's another thing we're not designed to do is like, let's pick this human up and plop them somewhere else. And you're not traveling by horse and buggy. This is like within, an hour or whatever the case might be, you can be in a totally different location. Yeah. And so that can throw off your body's connection with the environment, with life. Yeah. And so one of the ways to accelerate you adapting to the new environment is fasting. Yeah. Which is, again, like cool. This is cutting edge research, and it's something so simple. Yeah. But so again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but also so bringing your food and or fast. Yeah. And so when they're coming by with that tray, they got the cookies and the chips and the sizzle pudding pops and all the, they got all the goodies. It's just like, just say no. You don't know what it's spiked with. Yeah. I don't know if people are going to get that layered joke. That's layered. You don't. Anyways, you got me now. Okay.
Yeah, and you add on top of it the processed food and the sugars and all of that stuff. And like the thing, I try to double down on the hydration as well during that time. I bring a glass bottle, and just for my own placebo, I take their plastic bottles and I pour it in mine. I shake it up, and I just like try to help that scenario. But what you brought up with the circadian rhythm is very, very real. And especially when you have, 5 hours, 6, 10, like these things, now it's really can mess you up. So again, the more diligent you are while you're in the air, get up, move around, do some breathing, nose breathing only, try to create the scenario, because the nitric oxide naturally releases from your nose, so the oxygen you are taking in is going to be more available by deep breathing in the alveoli. And then not to mention that dry, bloody air coming in, at least it's going to be moisturized a little bit through the nasal passages. Right. So again, it's just these little things that are so powerful when you add them up, when you're in this weird, like you said, this weird artificial environment that we definitely have not adapted to. So you just want to, this whole thing, all of these things are just ways that how can I minimize the level of stress? And I love that, because I haven't seen that study with fasting. I've done it many times instinctually, or that I didn't have food, and I always feel better. And I love that there's a study on that. I'm going to have to grab that study from you. So it's just minimizing all of this stuff. And then if we want to just touch on the scanner things, just since we're in the airport mode, these TSA scanners are so interesting to me, that these millimeter non-ionizing radiation. Here, the interesting thing was there was a bunch of, and you'll find this weirdly interesting. As I was digging, there's a few doctors having statements of going, I'm concerned. I'm like, okay. Like, I'm concerned about these millimeter waves. Thank God we're not using ionizing radiation, because at one point we were, like, full x-rays. So that TSA thing that you go in and it scans your body, it's using non-ionizing. But keep in mind, non-ionizing, it's a type of microwave, right? Hello.
All right. I want people to hear that part. It's a type of microwave.
You're going into a microwave. So when you have a TSA agent and you ask them a question, no, it's safe. That's all they say. They don't know anything about anything, right? You're going into a microwave. It's millimeter voltage of EMF. It's like a concentration EMF generator, right? Enough to look through your freaking body and to see if you have anything. So here's the easy thing. So EMF, heavy EMF exposure, we know that there's a lot of stress, cellular stress, pushing the calcium out, creating a lot of osmotic pressure and calcium changes and DNA strain and stress and damage. Okay, so we know that. So why would you put yourself in that position? You have an out. You literally have an out. You can opt out. I have never, and I've traveled a lot, I have never been in one of those things, ever, right? So as soon as I have the global entry and the pre-screen, all of that stuff too, so that helps.
Yeah.
Those are helpful.
Sometimes they don't even have scanners for those. A lot of times they don't.
Yeah, you just walk through the regular
metal detector.
Yeah, but clearly international, blah, 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 and you're going to run into these scanners. So all I do is go look at the guy who's going to walk you through or walk you in. I said, I want to opt out. They look at you a little funny, and they said, okay, and then they yell to the guy, hey, we got a male opt out, because the male has to be with the male and the female has to be with the female. And so then you just wait patiently.
And a really highly qualified TSA agent comes.
Highly qualified.
To give you a personal scan.
Personal pat-down scan. So
this is great. I've been that guy as well. It's just like sometimes we don't want to be that guy because everything is just is normal, which is abnormal.
Yeah.
People are just funneling through, this instant microwave. But here's the thing too, because the thing that comes up for me is like, oh, it's just like that. It's just a quick second.
Right.
But within a quick second, these waves shoot through your body, through your cells. It could literally damage your DNA. It's not a joke.
Yeah.
But to what degree, I don't know. But once we start stacking these things on top of each other again and getting more and more away from being human, and we're tinkering with things that we've never had exposure to in our evolution. We're tinkering with these things under the guise of protecting our citizens, for example, which again, talk about that.
It's so crazy. So most of these new ones were implemented from 9/11, right? So we pushed all this in and we're like, listen, who's going to say no? Right? So like, let's get let's stop all this stuff. Guess what hasn't been thwarted anything? These scanners haven't stopped any known attack since the beginning. So now what, 20 years later? So they don't want that information, because as I was digging, number one, there was very little on record studies specifically on the TSA scanner. But there was a bunch of these statements of guys that have concerns. So I couldn't find any real studies. But then you could go, okay, it's microwave, it's this, of course, and then there's some studies that show. So they're avoiding that kind of thing. And then what they really don't want you to know is that they've virtually been ineffective at stopping anything. And you know what one of the bloody statements of one of the manufacturers and the guys in the airport security head guy said? He said, well, it's a placebo. Well, it deters people. Like, are you kidding me? So now we're going to go into a microwave and the best answer you got is it's good at deterring people. Guess what I could do? I can give you a dog. My dog, he's intimidating, a 90-pound German Shepherd, and no one has to go in a microwave. Just have a German Shepherd sitting right there.
It's a deterrent.
That'd deter.
Again, these are all these fatal conveniences, and it appears that these things become normalized.
Yeah.
And it seems to make it more convenient, so we don't have to hold up the line. We don't have to take more time, whatever the case might be, getting to where we're trying to go, but at what cost?
Exactly.
And so just for us to just be aware of these things, so I'm so grateful to have you on to talk about these things. I want to ask you about a few more of these. And the next one is, oh man, this one is it's crazy. Cough syrup,
Yeah.
right? So let's talk about that. Why is that a fatal convenience?
Cough syrup, that surprised me. Because I'm like, okay, I'm assuming codeine. We're going to find codeine in there, right? It's a dilator, bronchodilator. We've had bronchodilators all the time if you have bronchial issues. Number one, the cough drops and cough things. But again, this goes way back. We've been dealing with, no one wants a freaking annoying cough, but there's a very real and reason why we're coughing. It's a protectant to get rid of these irritants that are bothering us, to surround them in fluid to get them out of the body. So coughing is a normal thing, but there's a certain point where it can then start to cause some damage too. So then we're like, okay, how do we deal with this? So the history is fun to understand. He's just checking in. Little Chaga's checking in after his nap.
And you were sharing that in the fatal convenience, you know, and I love this because, and that I love that you mentioned that earlier about our vibe and our connection. But I was listening and getting some of the history, and it's like, that's what I would do because I'm interested in like, where did this start?
Yeah.
You know? And so in the beginning, well, again, we don't know how far back this goes, but some of the newer injunctions of kind of quote cough drops were, I mean, again, some of them are based on natural things, right? But then we start to get into the more chemical nature, and before you know it, once we open that door, things can get scary quick. So you mentioned the codon being one of the things, and it has this biological effect. Yeah. But what are the other effects that it can have?
Yeah, and then the codeine's a scary one because you can use that, I think the biggest scary thing, the way I was looking at it, is this new compound. I forget the big name, but it's DXM. I forget the whole.
I was like, dog.
DX. Yeah, DXM.
DXM.
And this is interesting, the way our thought process is with when we're creating these things. So DXM, you know, originally we're like, let's use menthols, eucalyptus, honey, like lemon, warm water. Let's use those things to soothe and coat and all of that stuff. The DXM, they go, nah, screw it. Let's just go neurologic. Let's just go all the way and try to change the neurological mechanisms of your body coughing. So you're like, what the hell? And I literally had no idea that this existed, because I go in with I know that there's some problems, and this one was like, blew me away. And of course, as soon as you use it or abuse it, you start getting some issues. So kids started using this, and you start getting high, hallucinating, and then it derails and literally can, and then you start combining it with the alcohol, the codeine, and now you're just experimenting in this pharmacological soup that in its core is disrupting a neurological mechanism of coughing. So this is a very, very dangerous chemical that is in our cough syrup, for God's sakes. So that was the alarming side of this. Then you realize how many kids are suffering. You realize how many psychotic breaks that it can cause and neurological issues. And I was like, that's cough syrup. That's cough syrup, man. Like, what the hell? How can we, and that, again, dude, when I'm recording these things, I sometimes, after I've already done the research, I've already written it out, and I'm recording it, I hear myself saying it, I end up getting pissed. I don't know if they're editing some of that stuff out, but I get pissed sometimes because I'm hearing myself say this, and I'm reading stats of children suffering and pregnant women being affected, and kids who aren't even born being, 200 chemicals are in the umbilical cord of every quote unquote normal child being born to this day. And that was 15 years ago, that research. So we have chemicalized all of these things. So it's so I go back to this whole thing. I can't believe it, almost to the point where I can't believe what's going on in the world today, but I can't believe that we've allowed it. And again, if I can share something that a mom who's controlling the household, who's buying the stuff, can not buy the stuff with that in it, can buy some natural compounds, natural medicines to use instead, and not literally have this stuff around their children and being ingested, then that's worth all of it.
Yeah, this is a big one. It's a fatal convenience in every sense of the word. A lot of kids have some serious neurological damage, deaths. And this is something that's just on store shelves like it's nothing. And to what point, And so I think it's important, and you did highlight this, like nobody wants to like experience the coughing, and that if there's something that we can do to help to but what we want to do is help our bodies to pass that threshold of discomfort by getting better faster. Because the coughing is a natural reflex and your body's trying to heal itself. It's a part of the process, but there are things that can help to make the process more graceful. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the bees earlier. So with beekeepers, they actually have, because we're also getting close as of this recording, the cold and flu season, which is gonna be this year. Just wait and see. But they have an incredible, and this is what we have in our cabinets. It's called Bee Better Cough Syrup, and it's based on, listen to this, pure buckwheat honey, elderberry, chaga, bee propolis, and olive leaf extract. And the reason that this matters, but does it work? Randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study revealed that honey was able to outperform placebo and significantly reduce cough frequency and severity at night and improve sleep quality. And you're not getting the blue number 1, the FD&C red number 40, the high fructose corn syrup, propylene glycol in the cough syrup. The list goes on and on. The sweeteners, the saccharin, all these crazy things. So you're getting something that is natural, that's been utilized for thousands of years, incredibly effective, and just to help to support the body's process along the way. And really quickly, I didn't know it was just an opportunity to mention this because I actually saw it today. But I was just hanging out with Michael Beckwith, and one of the things that I saw is, we were just kind of rummaging through my superfood cupboard, and elderberry, which is in here as well. And it reminded me of this study. And this was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. And this was published in a peer-reviewed journal, Advances in Traditional Medicine, found that after 48 hours of treatment with elderberry, coughing was relieved in 31% of patients versus a placebo. And the study also noted significantly reduced fever, headache, muscle aches, and nasal congestion within 24 hours of treatment with elderberry. It's in there. Bee Better Cough Syrup. This is one of my favorite companies. Beekeepers Naturals is doing stuff the right way. They're testing for, they're doing the extra thing that isn't being done, which is actually using third-party testing and testing for pesticides and heavy metals and all these things that are in a lot of bee products out there, the conventional ones that don't care as much. And so go to beekeepersnaturals.com/model. That's BEEKEEPERS naturals.com/model. You get 15% off everything that they carry. I'm a big fan of their superfood honey, but this is one thing to definitely have in your cabinet is this Bee Better cough syrup. And, like I mentioned, man, this one here, when I listened to this Fatal Convenience, it really hit me just how deeply it's embedded in our culture. Utilizing cough syrup for the high. And then I was thinking back to my childhood and just like, parents even today, like just to get that kid to just knock them out or whatever the case might be, put some tussin on it, using some Robitussin, some NyQuil, whatever the case might be. And this stuff is really, it's designed to to intercept your brain activity. It's not a joke.
Yeah, it's not a joke. And I love the other side of it too, like with the beekeepers, like you literally have no side effects. It's flowing with nature. It's been used forever. I mean, I even have elderberry on my property, and so it's like that stuff's been around and for a very long time. And honey, it's like how much more soothing can honey be? So yeah, and I love that. So anyway, hats off to that company for doing the right thing.
Well, since I got you here, if we can get in one or two more of these fatal conveniences,
Sure.
you've dabbled in this one a little bit. You've mentioned the laptops.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that, because it's literally called a laptop. So they're telling you to put it on your lap. You know, it's a lap dance, lap dance.
Yeah.
Why is this a concern? Why is this a fatal convenience?
I mean, it comes down to reproduction. I mean, that's boom, straight. It literally both male and female. So there's, I mean, aside from the EMF, the heat, testes outside of the body are there for a reason to regulate temperature. Testes inside the body, which is why they're outside of the body, changes their testosterone. So if we have a laptop, and the laptop, just feel your laptop, taut, 2 degrees higher, changes the motility level, and plummets your ability. So motility is basically the production and the utilization of sperm being effective, right? So motility just plummets. So it's literally undercutting the very Darwinian evolution of men. And again, we talk about getting hit from all these other angles. All these personal care, all these other things are also hitting you from an endocrine disrupting standpoint. So this is a physical heat thing as well as cellular DNA, RNA damage of the EMF that is on your lap.
And this is verifiable. It's a real thing. People just have no idea.
100%. And yeah, you don't want, I mean, I see people all the time with their friends and they throw their phone like this on their crotch. I literally reach over there, and they're good friends. They're good friends. And I just grab it and say, dude, what are you doing? Like an EMF signal is just going right to your nuts, and women too. So there all of these other estrogen fertility studies linked to women having these laptops on. So EMF heat seems to be the thing. Again, they don't want the EMF stuff out there much. They always go to the heat thing, right? And most of the studies are on the heat. And so FCC regulations are so old, they're not even trying to update the EMF frequency damage, right? So those regulatory bodies are ancient. So they're just allowing all of this. There's no safety data. There's no, like, the intensity of frequency. It's only getting worse for, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5. It's only getting more and more intense. And so as a device is gathering signal, you become a hotspot, pun intended, So all that reproductive disruption, cellular disruption. So really bad idea on multitude of ways, especially if you're trying to get pregnant. The really easy fixes, I use this company that's not even a plug. I don't do anything for them. Safe Sleeve. So they have a lead sleeve that you can put on under your laptop or your device, whatever, and it blocks. And they have data, clinical data. The EMF can't go through it. And also space. So it really drops after like 9 inches. So the heat obviously then is not on then the EMF really drops after about 9 inches. So I have these, there's stand-up desks you can use and stuff like that, but I'll lay down on the couch and then I'll have my tray that I can like just goes over, and then I'm here, and ergonomically it's even better too. So that's a fatal convenience too, the positioning of just being at a computer, right? So at least you've taken care of that, and you've gotten the EMF off of your body, and you've gotten the heat off of your body. So this one's pretty easy to do, but my God, I see it. I just see people like no clue.
Just don't think about it, man.
Yeah, and that's the point. Like,
and again, simple things we could do. Distance, like you mentioned. There's the safe sleeve.
Yep, and I have one for my cell phone too. So like same thing. So this is a safe sleeve. Again, this isn't even a plug for them, but it is a plug. There's a lead on this side. So like if I have the phone on, I put that on this side of my body, but I usually, when it's on my body, I turn it off anyway.
Yeah.
So
same. If I'm not using my phone is away from me.
Yes.
Exactly. And like for the show, I'll have my phone by me, but even at home, when I get home, I take wallet, keys, phone, everything is somewhere.
Yeah.
Unless I need to use it.
Yeah.
And these are simple things because again, I would say we don't know the ramifications. We don't know the depth of it, but we do have some pretty sound data that is very concerning because again, we're playing around with technologies and tinkering with different waves and frequencies and not understanding our bodies. We evolve. We have different organs have different frequencies. And when we are exposed to things that can disrupt those things, some concerning things start to happen. Again, we're like stacking more conditions against us and wondering, why are there high rates of cancer? Why are there high rates of midbrain tumors in children who are just growing up with a cell phone up to their head? I talked about this in Sleep Smarter, my first book, and some court data. This was, folks in law firms trying to sue, but now they put warnings on the phones, for example, but it's just, we don't care because it's so convenient to just unbox your new phone, put it up to your head, and or whether it's your Wi-Fi headphones or whatever the case might be, which you talk about that as well. So there's so many more of these fatal conveniences that you highlight, map out, but also provide solutions for. And this is what I really appreciate is like, what can we do to kind of pivot to upgrade things? And we definitely have you back once this new book of this concept really outpictures and to talk about more of this, and really excited and just so grateful to have you in the game right now and doing what you're doing. It's incredibly inspiring, and you're somebody that we're linked up, man. And we got a lot of work that we need to do, of course, in the world right now, but I'm also same thing, I'm very optimistic. But right now we've really got to tune in, focus on getting ourselves as healthy as possible so that we can really drive the mission forward. But if you can you share where people can connect with you more, get more information on Darin, your book, and also just what else people need to know right now? The world is kind of bananas, so
Bananas, without a doubt. Well, Darin Olien on all platforms, and Instagram, Twitter, darinolien.com. I've been doing Darin's Deep Dives on Instagram on Mondays at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I actually talked about this. Sometimes I just turn on, I know what I'm going to talk about. And this one was important for me too. And that is, the world's crazy. It's easy to go down all these rabbit holes, easy to get sucked in, regardless of what you believe in all fashion. The thing that I would say to people right now is, and what I said on that one is, I said, listen, what can you do? What can you do for yourself? What do you want? What do you want the future to be? Write three things down. I'm challenging all of you right now. Like, write 3 things down, what you want, and then 3 actions to those. Because we're saying you got to do something. And so, but literally let yourself dream. Like, we look around going, wow, those things are all failing around us. Like, the world's not what we thought it was. Okay, what do you want it to be? Let yourself dream. And then put actions to that. Give yourself the authority in your life to take an action on what that dream is. And every day do that. And you'll find you'll be magnetized to other people that want to do that same thing. So even me, like, just go, okay, I got to keep focusing on the world that I want to create, the things that we can do. Take care of your house always, right? Take care of that house, and take care of literally your house, of your family and your children and your community. And then what do you want to do? So I really believe that that's medicine, and then taking action on that now helps you now. And then it starts laying those bricks of the future that we all need to build for each other.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here to up-level your health today. I was shocked. Most of the most popular brands that people are buying for D3 are encapsulated with horrendous, heavily refined soybean oil and corn oil. Because again, it's fat soluble. Let's just throw